As the background for my dissertation research on child welfare in Kentucky, I wanted to know about the relationships between religious organizations, child caring institutions, and state institutions in the Commonwealth. This interest originated in field work I conducted in 2017 at one such child welfare agency in Kentucky. During fieldwork, I attended staff training and retreats and noticed that the name and legacy of a Catholic saint was incorporated into the institutional culture of the agency. I wondered if this was a unique case or if other agencies in Kentucky had similar religious influences. To learn about the religious histories of child welfare in Kentucky, I conducted archival research at the Filson Historical Society in the summer of 2018 with support from the Center for Health and Well-Being. At the Filson, I worked primarily with the Francis McGregor Ingram papers. Frances Ingram was a progressive social reformer in Louisville during the early 20th century. She advocated for state oversight of child welfare, established service organizations for young women, children, and immigrants, and campaigned against child labor. She helped develop social work in Louisville as part of the Neighborhood House, which continues to provide social services in the city today. Ingram collected pamphlets, journal articles, newspaper clippings, and immense amounts of personal correspondence with social reformers all over the United States. Social concerns in Ingram's time are surprisingly similar to social concerns now. What do we owe to children? What resources do families need to be successful? What purpose should prisons and juvenile courts serve? I focus here on a dense narrative survey of the 54 child-caring institutions operating in Kentucky in 1919. I am primarily interested in religious affiliation, something Ingram documented in her study. Kentucky's child-caring institutions were primarily supported by Jewish and Christian communities across a wide variety of denominations. 29 of the 54 institutions that Ingram investigated were supported by individual denominations, while an additional 15 were inter- or non-denominational. Altogether, 44 of the 54 institutions she investigated had some religious affiliation. In the rest of the report, Ingram notes the range of support roles religious organizations played in institutions. Religious organizations conducted investigations, placed children in homes, raised funds, and provided full-time direct care. Many of these religiously affiliated institutions continue to operate child services across Kentucky in 2020. A number maintain funding relationships with religious institutions, but in most cases, religious organizations no longer provide direct care services. In-person participant observation in these agencies would be helpful to know more about how agencies handle religious legacies, although many of them do note that they were historically funded by churches, and websites express gratitude for the work of their founders. One notable case of continued religious affiliation is in the Southern Baptist Convention's role in the operations of Sunrise Children's Services, originally known as the Louisville Baptist Orphans Home. In 2000, Sunrise fired an LGBTQ care worker who filed a discrimination lawsuit. Some aspects of that lawsuit are still pending 20 years later. The question of appropriate state oversight of religiously affiliated child welfare agencies is far from settled, however, and will be addressed by an upcoming Supreme Court case, Fulton v. City of Philadelphia. What is fascinating about the archives and this report specifically is that, unlike me, Ingram seems to have been largely uninterested in whether a particular child-caring institution received financial or operational support from religious organizations. Her attention seems to be far more focused on the qualifications of the people running the institutions rather than their religious affiliations. This may have been in part due to the fact that Kentucky's state systems had not yet been organized. Ingram herself was heavily involved in organizing and garnering public support for state oversight of what would eventually become Kentucky's juvenile courts and Cabinet for Health and Family Services. Rather than a focus on religious affiliation, Ingram seemed primarily concerned with rooting childcare practices in the best possible science. Her collection suggests a deep interest in theories of development and attachment, criminology, psychiatry, nutrition, reproductive health, and physical activity. Much of the science in Ingram's time also explicitly incorporated eugenics, and historians have commented on the relationships between race, social control, and social work. These turn-of-the-century concerns about the science of children reverberate today, as do questions of racism and child welfare. During dissertation research in 2019 and 2020, I sat in on dozens of policy meetings that emphasized the importance of being data-driven and incorporating evidence-based practices into child welfare funding structures, and I attended few that mentioned race at all. Although much has changed, I hope that by reading current reform efforts alongside much longer histories of scientific inquiry, religion, and child welfare reform, I can encourage people interested in child welfare to delve more deeply into the histories of state systems that depend on ostensibly race-blind scientific discourses. Thank you.